Iran, America, and Israel. What's the true cause behind their conflict? There are 57 Muslim nations in the world. So why is it that America and Israel have placed their focus almost entirely on Iran? To truly understand this struggle between Iran and the United States, we need to go all the way back to the era of World War II. We shall never surrender. During the Second World War, every nation basically had two options: either stand by the British Empire or align with Hitler. Most nations chose to support Britain. But at that time, the Shah of Iran decided to collaborate with Hitler. Iran and Germany eventually developed very close ties. The British were extremely displeased with this new friendship, so they began attacking Iran from all directions and soon started overtaking the nation. Faced with overwhelming pressure, the Shah of Iran gave in to the British forces within a few days and pleaded with them to let him retain his crown. The British agreed, but on one strict condition: he had to step down and allow his 22-year-old son to be crowned the new Shah of Iran. This was because his son, Raj Shah Pahlavi, was a loyal supporter of British interests. The young king was deeply inspired by Western ideals. He wanted the Iranian population to dress like Westerners, host lavish parties like them, and gradually abandon their own traditions and religious practices. From the start, he tried to disconnect Islam from Iranian society. Due to this, he outlawed the hijab, shut down numerous religious schools and mosques, and arrested many prominent Islamic scholars as a result of his policies. Music parties and alcohol became common throughout the country. There even came a point when Iran was producing such large quantities of alcohol that it began exporting it to other countries, despite being a Muslim majority nation. The Shah genuinely believed he was making progress in his country. In fact, he began to see himself as a ruler among rulers. At one point, he told King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, "Why remain trapped in old customs? You should modernize Saudi Arabia and make it more like the West." But King Faisal strongly rejected this idea. Interestingly enough, today, it's Saudi Arabia encouraging Iran to be more liberal. But now, Iran refuses to comply because history has taken a different turn. Back then, the Shah pushed so aggressively to separate Islam from Iran that leading religious figures began to resist him openly. Many of these scholars started giving sermons denouncing his regime in mosques and religious schools. The most influential among them was Ayatollah Khomeini, who began to gather a growing number of supporters. These followers encouraged people across Iran to rise up against the Shah's rule. Eventually, Khomeini's influence grew to such an extent that the Shah had him arrested and then forced him into exile. Khomeini eventually settled in Iraq, from where he continued to lead the movement against the Shah. Interestingly, a young Saddam Hussein was carefully watching him from nearby. Over time, even Saddam began to fear Khomeini's growing influence. One day, Saddam even suggested to the Shah that he could eliminate Khomeini altogether by having him assassinated, which was very much Saddam's style, but the Shah responded by saying it was necessary, that Khomeini was too old to be a threat. Meanwhile, from his base in Iraq, Imam Khomeini began recording his speeches onto cassette tapes. These were then secretly smuggled into Iran and widely circulated. The Iranian public was deeply moved by his words and gradually began to view Khomeini as a true leader instead of the Shah. However, removing the Shah wasn't going to be easy. He had a powerful military and had full support from the global superpower at the time, the United States of America. America considered the Shah a loyal puppet within the Muslim world, but during the peak of his rule, the Shah made one of the worst decisions of his life. He announced a massive celebration to honor and revive the glory of the old Persian Empire. The world's grandest and most extravagant event was planned. Leaders and celebrities from around the world were invited for this occasion. A brand new city was even built in the desert of Iran solely for this event. The Shah ordered 600 limousines to transport his special guests. Meals were served on golden dishes And in front of this lavish crowd, the Shah sat on a golden throne and proclaimed himself the new emperor of Persia. Meanwhile, ordinary Iranians were struggling to afford basic food and water. They watched their king waste national wealth on a golden celebration and became deeply resentful. It was at this point that people began to embrace Khomeini's message even more. Khomeini declared in his tapes that the Shah of Iran was the Yazid of modern times. Slowly, Khomeini's support across the nation became so strong that the Shah realized he was losing control and that only one force could save him. He once again went to seek support, but this time France and other global leaders met and informed him bluntly that they could no longer protect him from Khomeini. After receiving this devastating news, the Shah abandoned Iran and fled into permanent exile. Upon hearing of the Shah's escape, Imam Khomeini, after 14 years in exile, returned to Iran. The crowd that gathered to receive him was unlike anything seen before. Over 7 million people came to welcome him, creating a world record for the largest reception for any political leader. With Khomeini's arrival, chants like "Death to America" and "Death to Israel" erupted across the nation. Soon after, his followers captured the American embassy and took its staff hostage. Khomeini demanded that the United States hand over the Shah in exchange for their release. This event formally began the deep animosity between America and Iran. But the Shah never came back. He passed away in exile. And his son attempted to claim the title of Shah, but by then it was too late. Khomeini had already established a new Islamic regime in Iran. Around this time, a new leader also came to power next door in Iraq, Saddam Hussein. The global powers were growing increasingly concerned by Khomeini's reach, because he frequently called upon Muslims worldwide to rise up against their corrupt rulers. This is when Saddam, with the backing of America and several Arab countries, launched an invasion against Iran, triggering a brutal war that lasted for 8 years. Despite having global support, Saddam failed to defeat Khomeini shortly after the war ended. Khomeini passed away. His funeral became the largest ever recorded in history, with 10 million mourners attending. It was officially recorded in the Guinness World Records. Following his death, Iran's leaders selected Ayatollah Ali Khomeini as the next supreme leader. He still holds that position today. After witnessing years of aggression from America and Israel, Iran's leadership came to the conclusion that the only way to deter further attacks was to develop their own nuclear arsenal. However, building an atomic bomb requires highly advanced technology, and back then no nation was willing to share this knowledge with Iran. So Iran waited quietly, hoping for some miracle. Then something remarkable happened. Right next door, Pakistan became the first Islamic nation to develop nuclear weapons. Pakistan successfully conducted 5 nuclear tests, and after that, their leading nuclear scientist Abdul Qadir Khan secretly began helping Iran by sending over critical centrifuge technology. The centrifuge is a vital machine for developing atomic energy and ultimately nuclear weapons. It spins much like a washing machine, but instead of spinning clothes, it spins uranium. If the uranium is spun briefly, it enriches to 5% and can be used for power generation, but if spun much longer to 90%, it becomes weapon-grade material suitable for atomic bombs. Using this technology from Pakistan and Iran, began constructing nuclear facilities, but soon after starting their program, America discovered what was happening. The United States didn't take much issue with Pakistan having nukes because Pakistan had always remained a loyal ally. Washington trusted that Pakistan would never act against their interests, but Iran has never followed the same path. Iran has consistently resisted Western influence and refused to bow down to foreign powers. Time and again, it challenged America directly and issued bold threats. So when the United States discovered Iran's nuclear efforts, the American president addressed the world and stated in his speech that certain nations were attempting to create chemical and atomic weapons for themselves, one of them being Saddam Hussein's Iraq, and the other Iran under Khamenei. Everyone across the globe now knows that this was a massive fabrication. Not long after George Bush's announcement, the US invaded Iraq, killing thousands and toppling Saddam's regime. Once America dismantled Saddam's rule with such ease, a dangerous precedent was set. The US began to believe it could falsely accuse any country and justify an invasion. That's why, following the interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq, Iran became the next target. Again, America began pushing the narrative that Iran possessed nuclear weapons. During that time, global attention turned to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. It was the ideal moment for the US to launch a strike because American forces were already stationed in Afghanistan on one side and Iraq on the other, effectively surrounding Iran. Everyone awaited Khamenei's response to see how he would shield Iran from the superpower. What he said next shattered all the justifications the US had for attacking Iran. Khamenei, considered the highest religious authority in the Islamic world, issued a fatwa declaring the development and use of nuclear weapons as strictly forbidden in Islam. Islamic teachings emphasize that even in warfare, one cannot harm children, elderly individuals, or women. You aren't even allowed to destroy trees during conflict. But an atomic bomb destroys everything without discrimination. For this reason, Khamenei declared nuclear weapons entirely impermissible for Muslims. He also publicly stated that Iran had no ambition to build an atomic bomb and that the country's doors were open to all. Any global agency was welcome to come and verify for themselves that Iran had no nuclear weapons program. When the UN inspection team visited, they discovered that Iran's nuclear facilities closely resembled those found in Pakistan. The global community quickly realized that Iran had acquired this technology from Pakistan. The international pressure on Pakistan intensified so much that Dr. Abdul Qadir Khan appeared on national television, admitted to sharing the technology, and issued an apology to the world. That was the hard truth. To appease the global powers, Pakistan placed Abdul Qadir Khan under house arrest. After Khamenei's fatwa, America found itself with no legitimate reason to attack Iran, yet one country remained relentless in urging the United States to launch a strike, Israel. But America didn't immediately follow that path. Over time, the narrative shifted dramatically when an Iranian-born intellectual living in France made a peculiar claim. He argued that Khamenei's fatwa against nuclear weapons was insincere, accusing him of exploiting the Islamic doctrine of taqiyya, a concept that allows a Muslim to conceal their faith or lie to protect their life. This man asserted that the fatwa was nothing more than a strategic lie aimed at protecting Iranian lives. What made this accusation more explosive was the source, Mahmoud Murad Khani, Khamenei's own nephew. His mother, Khamenei's sister, and he were among the regime's staunchest critics within Iran. Following these revelations, American suspicion toward Iran increased significantly. Then in 2009, the United States imposed one of the harshest sanction regimes on Iran. If you examine the data, you'll see that Iran's economy was rapidly growing before the sanctions, but once the sanctions were enacted, Iran's economic engine virtually stopped. Despite sitting on vast reserves of oil and gas, Iran began facing severe financial difficulties. The sanctions were so effective that without American approval, Iran couldn't sell its gas to anyone, not even neighboring Pakistan. Even after signing an energy deal with Pakistan, Iran found that Pakistan refused to honor the agreement, instead choosing to import expensive LNG from Qatar. The situation was akin to someone being too terrified of a powerful landlord to even manage their own household properly. People often avoid buying affordable items from nearby stores and instead travel far to pay more elsewhere. Today, only 3 major countries maintain economic ties with Iran: China, Russia, and India. Due to these sanctions, Iran found itself in such dire straits that it eventually agreed to enter negotiations with the United States. During Barack Obama's presidency, Iran consented to a historic nuclear agreement, vowing not to pursue atomic weapons in exchange for the removal of crippling sanctions. The deal was seen as a landmark victory for both nations. However, from the very beginning, one American politician strongly opposed it: Donald Trump. In the US, there exists a deeply influential Jewish lobby, and without its support, very little can be accomplished politically. Shortly after winning the presidency, Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal and reimposed harsh sanctions to debilitate Iran's economy once more. The situation began deteriorating rapidly. But Iran was not like other Muslim countries that remained passive and silent. As soon as Trump reactivated the sanctions, Iran accelerated its nuclear program again. On the flip side, Donald Trump was not the type of leader to tolerate any form of defiance. When Iran refused to back down, Trump acted decisively. Without warning, he ordered a drone strike that eliminated Iran's top military commander, Qasem Soleimani. This act was monumental for Iranians. It was deeply humiliating for the nation to witness their army chief assassinated so publicly. The strike ignited a wave of resentment toward the United States within Iran. Shortly after Soleimani's assassination, presidential elections were held in Iran, and a hardline candidate, Ibrahim Raisi, was elected. Raisi was a stern, no-nonsense figure who vowed never to submit to American or Israeli pressure. From the moment Raisi assumed office, Iran's nuclear development resumed with urgency. He made it crystal clear that his administration would not engage in any further negotiations with the United States. Simultaneously, Iran began providing arms and financial support to various groups opposing Israel. During this period, tensions between Israel and Gaza escalated dramatically. But as history often shows, leaders who confront both the US and Israel rarely remain in power for long. President Raisi died in a helicopter crash, a tragic and mysterious end. Following Raisi's death, Iran once again held elections, and the people chose a leader who was the complete opposite of Raisi. The new president is known for his calm demeanor and pragmatic approach. One of his first statements was a reaffirmation of Khamenei's fatwa. He reiterated that Iran would never pursue a nuclear bomb and emphasized that Iran was ready to establish diplomatic ties not only with the United States, but with the entire global community. As a result of this policy shift, behind the scenes, negotiations quietly resumed between Iran and the US. However, Israel remains firmly against any such reconciliation. It has consistently opposed any form of détente between the two nations. Israel began taking aggressive actions once more, reviving old accusations against Iran. Claims resurfaced that Iran was on the brink of building a nuclear bomb within a month or two. These predictions have circulated for the past 25 years, each time claiming that a bomb is just months away. One must ask, what sort of atomic bomb takes more than 2 decades to manufacture? Still, these accusations persist. Israel has even alleged that Iran plotted to assassinate former US President Donald Trump. Consequently, Israel launched targeted strikes, eliminating key Iranian figures one by one. Among them was a senior advisor to the Supreme Leader, an individual believed to be a proponent of reaching an agreement with the United States. Through these calculated attacks, Israel is attempting to provoke Iran into retaliating impulsively. If Iran reacts emotionally, it would give the United States the perfect pretext to strike, aiming to dismantle the regime established under Ayatollah Khamenei many years ago.